What's up, guys? Spiritual Lemonade back with another video. This is everything that I listened to from this week's drops from June 20th through this week. We're going to start off with Titanium 2 by Ty Brazzle. This is the deluxe version. I already did my rating and review of the original Titanium 2, and I also did a album reaction as well to that if you want to go watch that one. But this is the deluxe version. I believe there was like 4 or 5, I think 5 new songs on this, one featuring Main 2 Wavy and one featuring Isaac Mansfield. Last week we rated and reviewed a project from Main 2 Wavy that I was actually really impressed with, and I was glad to see him on this as a feature. As much as I really liked the 5 new songs, I don't know if it necessarily fit the vibe of the rest of this album. So it was a really tough rating to do because I really loved all of these 5 songs, but for some reason only a couple of the 5 felt like they fit the rest of the album. So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, which is what I gave the original Titanium 2 before the deluxe dropped, because I don't necessarily think it took away anything, but I don't know if it necessarily added anything to it as well. But still a super solid 5 songs from Ty Brazzle there. We got Can't Lie to Love Deluxe as well. This is from Aaron Dews. Aaron Dews dropped this album. It was his debut album, I believe, last year, called Can't Lie to Love. And I think there were maybe 3 or 4 songs on this deluxe. And it was sprinkled, like the new songs were sprinkled throughout this project. So he said to listen to the entire thing all the way through. And I'll be super honest here, I wasn't the biggest fan of Can't Lie to Love to begin with. Back when it dropped, I believe I did a reaction to it, but I could be wrong on that. I know for sure I listened to it, and it is R&B, which sometimes for me is hit or miss whether I like R&B or not. And for the most part, I think the only song I really liked and went back to several times was Peanut Butter. But I have to say, these new songs that he added to the deluxe were like the only ones that I actually liked on this album. So it was a very strong like addition to this album. All of them were ones that I would go back and listen to again. So I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 as well, which is probably, if I had to rate the original, I wasn't doing ratings and stuff back when that dropped, when the original dropped, I'd probably give it a 3, and this deluxe is 3.5 out of 5. So shout out to Aaron Dews on that one. Next up we got The Hero by Dan Brems, I think is how you pronounce it. This was a short EP of 4 songs. They were really well written, produced, and everything. I gave that a solid 3.5 out of 5 as well. Let's see, we got a lot this week. Next up we got Dan Dean, his new album called More. I don't really know how to describe this style of music. It was singer-songwriter, like a lot of just vocals with guitar and not a ton of production behind it. A lot of nostalgic kind of reminiscing like style of lyrics. It wasn't really my favorite project. While there wasn't necessarily anything wrong mix wise or instrument wise, it's just not my personal taste. That's why I gave this a 2.5 out of 5. If you do want to give it a listen, I don't think, some people might actually really enjoy this. For me, there wasn't anything that really stood out on this project personally. That's why I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. We got Marty's new album, The One, up next. I really enjoyed this project. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I've heard the only thing that I really didn't like about this was half of the songs were already released. And I've heard most of the singles before this album came out. So I really only listened to like half the album. When it dropped, it was only like half the album that was new to me, which was a little disappointing. I was hoping for at least a little bit more length in this project, especially because it's an album and it's only 8 tracks and it's like, let's see, under 20 minutes long. But for what it is, like how short it is, there's a lot of stuff that was talked about, a lot of really cool production, a mix of like Kanye, Mac Miller. I think there were a couple other people that he said influenced the production and styles on these songs. So it was pretty evident, like, throughout these. I think Tupac is Still Alive in Cuba is my favorite one out of all these. Brooklyn Jazzman is my second favorite. I highly recommend you go take a listen to this if you haven't already. Let's see what we got next. All of Me by Evan Ford. This is probably, I think, one of a couple that were 4 out of 5s this week. This album really blew me away. So Evan Ford is the other half of, like, Evan and Eris, I think, something like that. It's a husband and wife duo, I believe, that I've seen them work with Reach Records and stuff before. But this is a solo thing that Evan Ford put out. And there's a lot of cool samples, a lot of just really interesting sounding production and flows over this. He kind of like mixes rap with a little bit of pop as well throughout this, and it was really, really well done. I am going back probably several times before the year ends, and I'm going to be listening to this again and again. There were just several songs like Make Room. That sample, it samples the I Will Make Room for You. That I think it's a worship song, but it was just so well done, and there's just so many earworms on this that you're just going to want to play some of these songs over and over again. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 on that one. Got North Star by Sunday. This is actually higher than the other album I just talked about. This is a 4.5 out of 5 album. For me personally, I've seen some other people rate it lower on Music Board. 4 people have rated this. So it's not like a lot of people have rated it so far. But Sunday is a goated artist, in my opinion. Not a lot of people talk about him. I don't feel like he gets talked about enough in the Christian space. But he puts out really, really solid soundscapes through his albums. Like, I've listened to all of his albums, I think, so far, and all of them hit just as hard. There's been no misses throughout any of his albums that I've heard. He has kind of like a indie, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like indie kind of sounding music, but worshipful. There's several songs on here that were just so good. Like, I can't say it enough. You guys, if you're not tapped into Sunday, you got to go tap into Sunday's music. He's just really, really good at what he does. So yeah, North Star was 4.5 out of 5 for me. We got Id Ego up next, and his album called For Glory, His Not Mine. I gave this a 3 out of 5. Id Ego is a producer, and he produced this entire album, and for every song that had a feature on it, the features were the only ones rapping. So he did the entire production and had other people come on to those beats and do their thing. And for the most part, I think a lot of the features did really good. Like Pierre and Coastside killed it on Knockout. Yaki the Kid killed it on Triumph. A3 killed it. The only one that I think could have done a little better was Jay Woods on parts of his song where it feels like the flow got a little tripped up in certain areas. So I think that was like the main thing that I had to like really criticize was just Jay Woods' verse. I think it was his verse, or maybe it was on the hook on his song Battleground. But for the most part, like I did a reaction to this. You can go watch it. I said like throughout this entire project it was very consistent theme wise. Obviously it's For Glory, His Not Mine, but there's also undertones of like a scenario of being in war, being in battle, so like Battleground, War Ready, all that kind of stuff, Triumph, Fight, Knockout. Like there's just very consistent themes throughout this. Next up we got Though It Be Across Hymns by Weston Skaggs. This is another really good album I listened to. I don't think there was any like original songs on this. This was just a project of him recording popular hymns like the Doxology, Ne'er My God to Thee, For the Beauty of the Earth, It Is Well With My Soul. He did it in a very interesting and unique way that I haven't really heard hymns be sung before, so I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was kind of like a indie kind of, I don't know, hippie is the right word or whatever, but it sounded really, really cool, like the production behind it. It wasn't like a choir kind of singing the hymns, it was just him. Next up we have Do Not Lose Heart by Cole Isaac. I gave this 3.5 out of 5. I saw after I had already listened and rated it. I think it was Poet's Cloth. He makes these hats that I wear in my videos. I'm pretty sure it was him. He had posted, or someone I know posted about this album, and I was like, wow, there's other people that know about him too, because he felt pretty underground to me. But the production, again, the way that he sings on these songs are just really good. Nothing mix wise that needs to be worked on, just a super solid project. This was an EP, so yeah, I'm excited to hear more from him in the future. We got a 3.5 out of 5 from him on that. Next up, we have Will Kellum, his new EP, In My Secret Place. I gave this 3.5 as well out of 5. Young C was featured. That was the only feature. But throughout these songs, he had very consistent flows. I really liked, as much as he has like really good flow, his writing does have a very similar sound throughout this entire project. So like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like the lyrics are really good, but I feel like they could also hit a lot harder in some spots. So I'm hoping in the future from him, he'll kind of expand from some of the things that he says, because a lot of his stuff is message heavy as well. There were definitely bars in that project, but I don't know how to describe it. It's like some bars I've already heard several times from other people. So I just would hope in the future him to expand on that. But next up we have Zachary Hader. I'm not sure how that last name's pronounced, but I've known of this guy for a while. And he dropped an album. It says album, but it's more of an EP called When It's Gone. And this was very folk heavy. I didn't even know he did folk music. I knew he was like a rapper / kind of like pop singer. But the lyrics were very heartfelt. The way he was singing was very authentic sounding, like very true to himself. And it was very like captivating when I was listening to this. So I gave it a solid 4 out of 5 on that one. We got Bizzle's new album called Nobody's Mascot up next. I did a written review on this one. You can go read it if you want. I'm not a huge listener of Bizzle personally. I know who he is. I know he's a huge like name in the Christian rap space, but I've never, other than like some earlier albums from him, it's been a long time since I've sat down and listened to an entire Bizzle project. So this was really cool. It had a feature from Gifted Hands. If you don't know who he is, he's a really cool artist. He has a really cool story. EGR was featured on this. Childlike CC. So there were some familiar faces on this, but he has a very similar delivery as Bryson Gray. You guys know my stance on Bryson Gray. And in my written review, it says Bizzle is another one of those like really in your face kind of Bible rappers where like he comes across as very like tough loving, very angry in some spots, and like he's not afraid to just call something out and say it very, sternly and stuff like that. Like he calls out habitual sins and like poor lifestyles throughout even this album right here. But the way that he does it is delivered in a lot more of a gracious, kind of tough loving manner that I think Bryson Gray fails to do. Obviously, he's not holding anything back. He's not afraid to just call something out the way it is, which is what Bryson Gray does in his music. But Bryson Gray pretty much, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Like Bryson Gray just has no compassion, no mercy or grace at all. At least it's what it sounds like through his music. If you go and listen to it, it just does not sound like he has any of that in his heart. So that was my stance on that. Overall, it was a 3.5 out of 5. I'm not the biggest kind of, like, that's not the kind of rap that I particularly enjoy listening to, but this was a solid album. I can't really complain too much about it. So next up we got Quanto Te Amo. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it was an album from Mosaic Music. This was the longest album actually that I listened to this week. It was almost an hour long. So for two reasons, it was like an hour-long worship album, but also I just have no idea what the words were meaning because it's all in Spanish, which I don't have a problem with any music being in Spanish. I just don't know what it's saying, so I can't really judge too much off lyrics. I can just judge off the sound, the mix, and all that. So I gave it a 3 out of 5, but I'm sure that if I like knew what the words were saying throughout this album, it would be a little bit higher rated album. We got Magnus by Aiden Magnuson up next. This was a very impressive album for me. Even though I gave it a 3 out of 5, it was still very impressive from a newer artist, at least new to me, but it looks like he's also a pretty new artist in general. He had features from Lil King, RKL. I've seen his name on a lot of stuff recently, but it was a very solid underground sounding album. So if you're looking for some underground Christian rap, I highly recommend this one. Next up, we got MTM Isaiah's new album, More Than Money. It's been a while since I've heard anything from MTM Isaiah, so I was happy to see not only did he drop, but he dropped a new album. For me personally, this album is probably my least favorite out of everything that he's dropped, just because there's not as many songs on this project that have like a standout quality to them. Like most of his other albums, each individual song is very standout to all the other ones, and that's what like why I like his music, is just because it's always like very consistent, and on a lot of these songs it just sounded like a bunch of songs I've already heard from MTM Isaiah, if that makes sense. So it's not like anything was terrible on this album, but there were just a lot of songs with similar messages from other albums in the past. But I liked Sorry. That was one of my favorites on this. Turned Up and Chopped Cheese. That was a fire one. But yeah, it's still a super solid listen. Just if I'm going album to album, this is probably on the lower end of my like favorite list from him specifically, but I still give it a 3.5 out of 5 because obviously like mix wise and vocal wise, beat wise, everything was crazy, like really good sounding, so nothing I can really complain about on that end of things. We got Brand New Mercies by Procise and Just James. This was, it says an album, but it really wasn't like the length of an album. It was 7 songs. Some familiar faces, Dre Murray's, Mike Wise, and then other people as well that I'm not familiar with. But there were a lot of good bars on this. There was, I think, at least two times the whole J. Cole and Kendrick beef. I think it was this one. Let me double check real quick. Yeah, it was this album. The Drake beef got brought up a couple times with Kendrick. I think the bar was like, I speak the truth like Kendrick on Meet the Grams. And then there was something about J. Cole, I'm pretty sure. On 7 Minute Drill by J. Cole, he's like, your arms are too short to box with a god. And then on this album, I don't know who said it, but someone said, your arms are too short to box with my god. So it was a cool little nod to that. But overall, there's just a lot of songs on here that sound the same, so not a lot of standout songs to me personally. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. But if you're looking for some like really bar heavy songs and just kind of with an old school kind of sound as well, this had a more of a not super boom bap sound, but just an older production style behind it. This would be worth checking out for you. We got Rain Check by Refuge, Bianca Silver, Way, and Syph 2. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but this was a really, really solid EP. It was only 4 songs, but each song was like at least 3 minutes long. It was 14 minutes in total for the runtime. But each song was actually so good. Like, it's crazy. I added all these songs to one of my playlists that I listen to pretty frequently. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5. This is going to be probably in my top 10, maybe even top 5 EPs of the year. I added it to the list for contenders for this year and it's just so good. It has a very indie kind of mix with rap and pop and stuff. There's just so many different vibes going on throughout this, and each song, while it relates to each other, like it all has, it all fits the message of the overall project. Each song, like production wise, kind of has a little bit of a different sound and vibe throughout it. So it was a really interesting listen. I highly recommend you go listen to this if you're looking for some new indie kind of music from Christian artists specifically. Next up we have The Hymns by Brocky and Germ 43. This is their new album, a collab album. They actually sent this to me, and I told them I'd be talking about it in this video. And this is the first time I've heard of Germ 43. I've heard the name Brocky before several times. I don't know if I've necessarily heard any of his music before, but I've seen his name pop up on like Instagram and stuff. And I really liked this album as well. This is another underground sounding album. Like all of these songs have that underground kind of auto-tune over a trap beat kind of sound. I gave this 3.5 out of 5. There was some cool flows on here, some good bars, and just a good vibe. So if you're looking for some more underground Christian rap, this is another really good album to check out. We got Too Many Rings by 808 Beezy up next. This is his new album. And I've also never sat down and listened to a full album from him, but I've known of him since he was YB, and then he changed his name to 808 BZ. I think the first time I heard him was a reaction that No Life Shack did to one of his earlier songs. I think it was Fire Emoji, one of those songs. And ever since, like maybe a year or so ago, I've been listening to him more consistently, and this album was really good. It blew me away, especially because it also had a very consistent theme throughout this. It's called Too Many Rings, and rings as in like Super Bowl rings, because throughout this whole project there's like clips of interviews. I don't know if this is like a theoretical interview, like a character that 808 BZ's putting on, or if he actually was in the NFL, but it's like him with an interviewer talking about 808 BZ being in the NFL. I don't know if that's true. I tried to look it up and I couldn't find anything on it, but it was really cool to hear the different like clips of the interview with the music as well. Every single song is so fire, so hype and upbeat, just perfect for a gym playlist or a running playlist, whatever kind of exercise you guys do. So I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was a super solid listen. Next up we have More Than Music by BTB Josh. This was also kind of an underground sound. It had Lil Capo on here, Next Pierre. Yeah, Lil Capo was featured on several songs on here, and it had a very similar vibe to Brocky and Germ 43's album, but I feel like on this one there were less like bars on here, where like Germ 43 and Brocky, they had some like punchlines. Even though it was like that auto-tune trap kind of sound of music, they still had some like really some cool bars here and there throughout that album. And on this one, I feel like it just lacked a little bit of that lyrical content. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 on this one. But still another super solid underground album if you want to go check it out. We got Asai, in parentheses Embrace. I think that's what it's called. Like I don't know what language it's in, but Asai means embrace. And I could be completely wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that this is a group. It's called Living Room Music. It's a group from Africa, somewhere in Africa, and this was another album that blew me away this week. It was a 4 out of 5. So basically it's like worship music, but with a totally different production style. It's not necessarily Afrobeat. There's a couple songs on here that almost have that same rhythm as Afrobeat music, but as a whole, it was like more of a stripped back acoustic kind of vibe. I mean, still somewhat like produced and stuff, not acoustic as in it's just a guitar and someone singing, but a lot more like chill vibe on this one. But it was just a really, really good listen. I'd recommend this one. a lot for this week. This one and like a few other ones really blew me away this week. So I'm happy about that. Like, we've got some good albums. The next album we're talking about is War by Caleb Gordon. This is an album that Caleb Gordon's been talking about for a while. He planned a tour and then had to cancel the tour. He said that he's dropping an album, and now he's also expecting a kid, which congratulations to him. Him and his wife are expecting a kid. And then, yeah, this album dropped, which also on this album, several songs have already been released or released and then taken down and re-released. So a good bit of this album I've already heard going into it, which I was also a little disappointed at. Like, if you're dropping an album and you have like 5 or 6 of the songs already out, why are we doing that? I really want to go back to when artists would put maybe 1 to 3 singles out before an album, because I feel like it just builds more excitement. People are more interested in the entire album as opposed to just listening to the ones they haven't heard before. I could be totally wrong on that with the whole streaming world now, but that's just how I would prefer it to be. But I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was really solid. I think You Can't Cancel Me was one of my favorites on this one. Upside Down goes crazy as well. And Guard My Heart, but those have already been out, so they weren't like new to me or anything. And then War is finally back on streaming platforms, so I was happy to see that. That was I think it was a Bob Marley kind of, not like sample, maybe it's a sample or something. And then Rivers of Zion was also I'm pretty sure a Bob Marley thing as well. So that was that. We got Scepter up next. It's a EP by An Endless Ocean. Endless Ocean is new to me. I've never heard of him before, but he popped up on Spotify's new Christian music playlist that got updated this week. So I checked it out, and I really, really liked this as well. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I think the first half I really, really liked, and then the other half was just, it was nothing that stood out like a lot to me. It sounded more normal, like for the kind of vibe of music he's making. It didn't have a lot of standout kind of stuff, but the first 3 songs, super solid. I loved them. I highly recommend you go listen to this entire EP. Next up, we have You Can Have It All by King's Porch. King's Porch is, I think, a worship group from somewhere, and this was just a short 6-song. It should be probably an EP, but I did enjoy this for the most part. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Worship music is a little weird for me to review and stuff, and usually when I give a worship album a lower rating like this, it's because it's over an hour long. You guys know my whole thing on that. But this one was actually pretty short. It was like under 30 minutes. So that part I didn't have an issue with. I actually liked the fact that it was 30 minutes long. But some of the writing I feel like just didn't hit super hard for me, which is why I just gave it a 3 out of 5. It's just my personal taste in worship music. Next up we have Real by Blessing Offer. This was a short EP of 5 songs, and the only feature on this was Dolly Parton. That was pretty interesting to see her on this. Blessing Offer has some songs that are, or he's been on some songs with some other popular people, I think, like maybe Elevation Worship maybe. But this is the first time I've heard of him. And there were some really good, like, well-written songs, like The Morning and Jordan's. I really liked those 2 songs on this. But Somebody's Child with Dolly Parton, I don't know if it's just I don't like Dolly Parton that much. Like, her voice doesn't sound that great to me. But that brought the song down a little bit for me personally. So overall, I gave it a 3 out of 5, but I will be tapping into his music more. And then, yeah, Things Jesus Didn't Say by Ron Pope. Ron Pope, I guess, is pretty popular. I looked him up on Spotify, and he has like 1 million monthly listeners. And I've never heard of him before, but he has a very similar style to like Zach Bryan and Noah Kahan. Like a little bit of folk, but more of a country vibe throughout the production. And I really, really liked this, especially Things Jesus Didn't Say. That first song was crazy. I will say, as a heads up, if you do end up going to listen to this, he does curse a few times throughout this project, which I didn't realize when I was listening to it. I was like, oh, because what he's saying sounds really good. But just a heads up, he does curse a little in a couple of the songs. But I gave this a 4 out of 5, and I added this to as a contender for EP of the year. So, yeah, super solid projects this week. I did listen to Benson Boone's new album as well, which he's not a Christian artist at all, but I'm pretty sure I've heard that he's a Christian himself, like in his personal life. And I actually wasn't too mad about that album. I know a lot of people don't like Benson Boone. I do not like the song Beautiful Things. I do not like that song, but this album was like kind of different than that vibe, I'd say. I'm not a huge fan of the Moonbeam Ice Cream song. That's annoying. But some of the deeper cuts on that project were really good. I haven't gone and rated that album yet because I just got home from listening to it in the car, so it's fresh on my mind, but I did listen to that as well. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm excited for tomorrow. We got John Keith's new album dropping, so be on the lookout for that reaction. I'm doing an album reaction to that for sure. But yeah, go be fruitful. Let's go.